Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy emerged from the White House Monday without a deal to raise the limit on the national debt. McCarthy's high-stakes negotiations with President Biden came just 10 days before the U.S. faces a possible default on loans, with Republicans demanding sweeping cuts to social programs as the price of any deal to raise the U.S. debt ceiling. After the talks, McCarthy shrugged off a reporter's question about whether Republicans would support rescinding the Trump-era tax cuts that overwhelmingly favor corporations and wealthy U.S. residents.
So the problem is not revenue, the problem is spending. I simply believe, like any household, like any business, like any state government, when you're this far out of whack, you have to spend less than you spent last year.
Earlier this month, the Congressional Budget Office reported extending tax cuts passed in 2017 and signed by then-President Trump would add $3.5 trillion to the federal deficit through 2033. This is House Democratic Leader Hakeem Jeffries.
They've taken revenues off the table. They don't want to revisit the GOP tax scam, which exploded the debt by $2 trillion to subsidize the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. They said, no, we can't have a conversation about that. Can't have a conversation about revenue. Can't have a conversation about any policy changes that Democrats would like to have. Does that sound like a negotiation? Or is that a hostage-taking situation?
House Democratic Leader Jeffries said he's open to a deal that would see federal spending frozen at current levels. Members of the Congressional Progressive Caucus have rejected that idea. They're calling on President Biden to invoke his authority to avert a debt default under the 14th Amendment of the Constitution. Russia's war in Ukraine spilled back into Russian territory Monday as self-described anti-Kremlin Russian militias launched cross-border raids into the Belgorod region of southwestern Russia. Groups calling themselves the Russian Volunteer Corps and the Freedom of Russia Legion claim to have captured the Russian border town of Kozinka and several others. This is an unnamed fighter with the group in a video released Monday.
Мы такие же россияне, как и вы. Мы такие же люди, как и вы.
We are Russians just like you. We are people just like you. We want our children to grow up in peace and be free people, so that they can travel, study, and just be happy in a free country. But this has no place in today's Putin's Russia. Rotten from corruption, lies, censorship, restrictions on freedoms, repressions.
In a statement, Russian officials said they'd opened a terrorism investigation against anti-Kremlin militia fighters in Belgorod. Meanwhile, a recent UN report accuses mercenaries from Russia's Wagner Group of involvement in a March 2022 massacre in a village in Mali in Africa, which killed at least 500 people. Most of those are believed to be civilians rather than Islamist militants, as claimed by authorities. The report also says the attack by Malian troops and Wagner in Moura included rapes and torture. Wagner mercenaries operate in Mali and at least 6 other African nations, where they've been accused of atrocities, while the U.S. has said Wagner is trafficking natural resources from African nations to fund the invasion of Ukraine. India's meteorological department has issued heat alerts for the capital, New Delhi, and several states as daytime temperatures soar to 45 degrees Celsius, or more than 113 degrees Fahrenheit. Parts of the northern state of Uttar Pradesh have suffered blackouts of more than 12 hours, coming despite a government order that all power plants run at full capacity. In Alberta, Canada, forecasters say rain and cooling temperatures should help firefighters bring a record-smashing spring wildfire season under control after some 2.3 million acres burned. Smoke from the fires has prompted air quality alerts in U.S. states including Colorado, Idaho, Montana, and Utah. On Monday, the World Meteorological Organization reported extreme weather events caused some 2 million deaths since 1970, with over 90% of those killed from the global south. The Biden administration has reached a 3-year deal with western states to conserve water from the Colorado River. Under the agreement, the federal government will distribute $1.2 billion to water districts and tribes in California, Arizona, and Nevada to compensate them for cutting back their water use. The plan hopes to slash water use from the Colorado River by 13%. 30 years of drought fueled by the climate crisis have reduced the river's natural flow by about 20%. Conservationists welcome the agreement, but said a more permanent solution is needed to protect both the river and the 40 million people who rely on it for agriculture, drinking water, and electricity. Nevada lawmakers have approved a measure that would protect people from out of state who travel to Nevada seeking an abortion from prosecution. The bill now heads to Republican Governor Joe Lombardo's desk. Lombardo's office said he hadn't yet decided if he would sign it into law. In related news, 8 more women have joined a lawsuit against Texas's near-total abortion ban, arguing the restrictions put their health and lives at risk as they were forced to carry out pregnancies despite experiencing medical emergencies. 5 other women had initially filed the lawsuit in March. South Carolina Republican Senator Tim Scott has entered the race for his party's 2024 presidential nomination. Scott officially announced his candidacy Monday at a campaign rally in North Charleston.
Joe Biden and the radical left are attacking every single rung of the ladder that helped me climb. And that's why I'm announcing today that I'm running for President of the United States of America.
South Carolina Senator Scott is the 11th black senator in U.S. history and only the 2nd African-American Republican senator since Reconstruction in the 1860s and 70s. He has an A rating from anti-abortion and pro-gun groups. The writer E. Jean Carroll seeking further damages in a defamation lawsuit against Donald Trump after he mocked her in a May 10th televised town hall event broadcast live on CNN while an audience packed with Trump supporters laughed and applauded his remarks. Carroll's seeking at least $10 million in additional compensation. Earlier this month, a New York jury in a separate lawsuit found Trump liable for sexually abusing her at the Bergdorf Goodman department store in the 1990s and defaming her, ordering Trump to pay $5 million. Meanwhile, federal prosecutors led by special counsel Jack Smith have filed a subpoena seeking information about the Trump Organization's deals in 7 countries since 2017. The probe suggests Smith is looking into possible connections between Trump's foreign business dealings and classified documents taken to Trump's Mar-a-Lago resort after he left office. The U.S. Secret Service has detained the driver of a rental truck that crashed into security barriers outside the White House Monday night. No one was injured in the ramming. Investigators found a Nazi swastika flag in the truck and say the driver hit the barriers at least twice, an apparently deliberate attack. In Arizona, the FBI has launched an investigation into the fatal shooting of the respected Tohono O'odham artist and leader Raymond Mattia, who was gunned down by Border Patrol agents outside his home last Thursday. Mattia lived in the community of Meneders Dam, just a few miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. He'd called Border Patrol after finding a group of migrants on his property. Mattia's family says he went outside when the agents arrived and that he was about 2 feet from his front door when they heard gunshots. His relatives are demanding justice as authorities have released few details into what happened. This comes as more details have emerged on the death of an 8-year-old migrant girl from Panama in the custody of Customs and Border Protection last week. Anadith Tane Reyes Alvarez suffered from a congenital heart condition and sickle cell anemia, according to her family. Reyes, her parents, and siblings were detained in Texas for over a week. While in custody, Reyes became sick with influenza. She later appeared to have a seizure and had difficulties breathing. It wasn't until her body went limp and she began bleeding from the mouth that border agents took her to a local hospital where the girl was pronounced dead less than an hour after arriving. Her mother, Mabel Alvarez, told the New York Daily News, quote, "She cried and begged for her life and they ignored her. They didn't do anything for her," she said. In Georgia, the gruesome death of LaShawn Thompson, a 35-year-old black man in the Fulton County Jail last year, has been ruled a homicide due to severe neglect. The findings of the independent autopsy were released Monday by Thompson's family and civil rights attorney Ben Crump. Thompson was being held in the jail's psychiatric wing, where his family says he was eaten alive by insects and bed bugs in his cell. The report found the lack of medical treatment for Thompson's schizophrenia, as well as dehydration, malnutrition, rapid weight loss, and, quote, severe body insect infestation, all contributed to his death. Thompson's independent autopsy, which was funded by former NFL star Colin Kaepernick, came after the Fulton County medical examiner ruled his cause of death was undetermined. In Hollywood, members of the SAG-AFTRA Actors Union have set a June 5th deadline for 160,000 members to cast ballots in a strike authorization vote. In recent days, actors have joined Hollywood writers on picket lines after some 11,500 members of the Writers Guild of America went on strike May 2nd to demand livable wages as corporate profits soar. On Sunday, students at Boston University graduation ceremony booed and chanted, "Pay your writers," as Warner Brothers Discovery CEO David Zaslav delivered the commencement address.
If you want to be successful, you're going to have to figure out how to get along with everyone. And that includes difficult people. Some people
and dozens of transgender children and youth from across the country gathered in Washington, D.C. Monday for a prom celebrating trans lives. The prom was held on the National Mall near the Capitol as anti-LGBTQ attacks intensify nationwide. This is trans activist Chase Strangio, a staff attorney at the ACLU, one of the organizers of the action.
These young people are here with the families and trans adults who love and care for them. Today, we are choosing to build upon the legacies of our ancestors, embracing the possibilities of our futures, and refocusing our collective imagination on the freedom, beauty, and joy that we represent. Our joy is ours. You may not see it, you may not think it exists, you may try to take it away, but it is ours. And today and every day, we celebrate, cultivate, and embrace it.
And those are some of the headlines. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report.